This is the left ear that we just looked in, and they've got a fungal ear infection in there called otomycosis. And this is the patient's right ear, and you can see the eardrum's obscured by a layer of thick, dead skin. I'm going to start off with the patient's right ear. So when the patient did attend yesterday, we did actually remove the left ear first, but I just thought, for the purposes of this video, I'll explain the right ear procedure first because it's a lot shorter, and then we'll proceed to the left ear. So immediately what I did, I instilled some sodium bicarbonate drops into the patient's ear because his skin is really hard and crusted. And I'm now using a fine end suction probe, and I've just suctioned out some of this excess sodium bicarbonate drops. Now, I use sodium bicarbonate drops for dead skin as opposed to olive oil. If you've been watching my videos, I'm a big fan of using some olive oil spray during procedures if you've got wet, sticky, lumpy, mushy wax because it binds it together. However, for dead skin, sodium bicarbonate is far more effective. Now, unfortunately, what's happened with this patient, and we don't know the exact cause, but we know it started 6 to 9 months ago, is that the skin on the eardrum, as it dies and sheds, so the eardrum is made up of 3 membranes. The outermost membrane that's facing us, we call that the lateral layer. That's the same skin that lines the inner 2/3 of the ear canal. Then you've got a middle layer, a membrane of the eardrum, which is a layer of fibrous and connective tissue. That's what gives the eardrum its strength and rigidity. And then the innermost, so the medial layer, so the lining of the eardrum that's in the middle ear, that's mucosa. So the mucosa is a layer of skin that can secrete, it's the same like in your nose almost. It's secreted mucus, hence the name mucosa. So it's kind of a wet, sticky layer. Now, as the skin dies on the eardrum, it should naturally shed, so it moves sideways out of the ear like a conveyor belt. Then you get another layer of dead skin, a fresh layer. That skin then dies and it moves sideways. So the eardrum continuously replaces the outermost layer of skin. But for some reason, we don't know why, the patient's in his 20s, the skin has stopped migrating. So it's dying on the eardrum, but it's remaining on the eardrum. It's not moving sideways. And in the case of the left ear, that has then led to a fungal ear infection, what we call otomycosis. Now, when we go back to the left ear in a moment, you will see that you have these fungal spores, and you get different type of fungal spores, but this patient, the spores are almost like cotton wool fibres. So I did ask the patient immediately, because the last time they attended, they did admit to use cotton buds, and it could have been that the cotton buds, the fibres had got stuck to the wax when he was pushing it in. Now, the patient did admit to using cotton buds, but for me, I didn't feel it was the cotton wool fibres on this occasion. It was very apparent that it was a fungal ear infection. So it can be really tricky removing the skin. It can be quite noisy as well. You get a bit of clarinetting, hence why I'm using a fine end. The patient did move on a couple of occasions, so as I was trying to peel the skin off, I was half kind of preparing myself to move out the ear just in case he does move. And you'll see a moment a bit later on where there was a sudden movement and I had to quickly evacuate the ear to prevent any trauma. So I've just put some more sodium bicarbonate drops in because this skin is extremely, extremely adhered to the eardrum. And I'm just, again, suctioning the excess oil first. So I got most of the skin out. There was a bit left on the handle of malleus, so the hammer bone, the first bone of the 3 ossicles. So connected to our eardrum, we have what we call an ossicular chain. The ossicular chain is the 3 bones, and you may know them more as being the hammer, anvil, and stirrup at school. Medically, the hammer bone is called the malleus, the anvil is called the incus, and the stirrup is called the stapes. The hammer, that's when the patient suddenly moves. You just saw that, and I quickly just got out the ear, so we don't want to cause any injury or trauma. So I'm just going to, I'm happy with that. We've got the majority of the skin. I've given a patient a treatment plan now, so we can try to keep on top of this, and I'll explain that a bit later, what I've discussed with the patient to try and maintain. And I don't think there's nothing I can do to stop the skin from not migrating off the eardrum, but I've just given some tips and hints on how we can manage it best. And so the hammer bone is connected to the eardrum, the first bone. You can see there's just a bit of crusted skin just on the hammer bone, and that's a very sensitive part of the eardrum. So I've decided just to leave that. I'm happy I can see the whole eardrum now. You can see the blue tinge, whereas before you couldn't. It was an oxidized layer of skin. So I'm just going in with the suction probe. I just want to drain and suction this excess sodium bicarbonate drops. And we're in the anterior recess. You can just see that view, how amazing it is, and how we can get access there. And I'm just hovering it. So that's the patient's right ear, so it's a lot more visible. So there is a bit of skin in the middle there. There is a bit at the top in the attic as well. Now, there's no retraction there. I did check for that. So a bit of sodium bicarb will soften that. And so that's part of the treatment plan. So we're back to the patient's left ear. So this is the main procedure. This is what the patient came in for, should I say. So there is a bit of wax there as well. You can see there's wax at the base. Now, the wax had been pushed in with the cotton wool. It was really impacted. So I did explain to the patient, please, trying to refrain from this because we did discuss it last time. The patient reports itchy ears, so the otomycosis, you can see the white layer at the back, and around the edge you will see some spores. It looks like cotton wool fibres. And what I'm trying to do, this is right up against, this is really deep in the ear. I'm just trying to lift this off the canal wall. Because of the cotton bud, it has really impacted. So I'm just going onto the anterior canal wall now. And you can see those spores like cotton wool, and it's attached itself to the skin. We are seeing a rise in fungal ear infections at the moment, and it could be that obviously it's a lot colder now and people are going indoors and there's more humidity in unventilated rooms, less circulation, and these fungal spores are entering each other's ears. I had a patient the other week who hadn't been going sauna for a long time, gone back to the sauna, there's other people in there, and no doubt he feels that it was that environment that led to his fungal infection. Now this skin is really, really adhered, and I am going to put some drops in a moment. But what I want to do, I want to try and keep this skin, I don't want to over soften it because I'm going to use some forceps in a moment. And we want this skin to be a bit crusty and a bit firm. If I put drops in too soon here, on this ear, the skin will get a bit wilted, and when you put the forceps on it, it's just going to slice it and cut it as opposed to extract it. So what I did with the suction probe, I lifted the skin off the canal wall. So I've got a bit of space now to insert the top jaw over the skin without making contact. And the patient did find this a bit uncomfortable. I'm sure he's watching, he's a YouTube fan. But it's not much more we could have done. You can see we avoided the canal wall. This does need to come out, unfortunately. And the patient was aware of that and was happy for me to continue. So I got some out, and I'm just, again, manoeuvring this dead crusted skin a bit. So I think I'll go back in jaws again with the forceps. I think I got a lot more out this time. And you can see quite often when you're performing in a clinical ear care, you have got a cacophony of instruments, a wide range of instrumentation we can use. And you use them in combination. You use them to support each other sometimes. So there we've used the suction probe just to move the skin a bit lower down, away from the canal wall so I don't make contact with it with the forceps. I then enter with the forceps and I'm bringing it forward. You can see there's a large piece of crusted dead skin there. So the eardrum is now more or less visible. However, once we remove this dead skin and wax off the mid-canal, this is probably mid-canal, we're going to go back in and there's some hidden sheets and shards and slithers of really dead, hard keratin, almost sharp like a piece of glass, shard of glass, but it was hidden away in the patient's inferior recess, which is a little trench at the base of the eardrum. So what would we advise this patient? So because of fungal ear infections, you can't really use antibiotics. Fungal infections are going to be resistant to that. So the patient's going to get some Canesten antifungal ear drops. They're available over the counter actually, and they're the same as what the doctor prescribes, believe it or not. So patient's going to use that. With fungal infections though, they're very stubborn things. So typically you use it for a while, 2 to 4 weeks, even when the fungal infections it would appear it's cleared. ENT doctors typically just advise a patient to use it for a week or more because they have got a habit and of kind of lingering in the background and then resurfacing later. So that's what the patient's going to do immediately, so to get rid of this fungal ear infection. After that, I've advised the patient to instill sodium bicarbonate drops on a fortnightly basis. We just need to keep on top of this now, unfortunately, because at the moment, for whatever reason, the skin is not migrating. So instead of the skin being really stubborn and hard, at least if they use the sodium bicarb drops, it will be softer. So when the patient attends to have it removed, it'll be far easier, because at times it was a bit uncomfortable. It was really hard, crusted wax stuck to his canal, and even with the drops, it's still obviously adhered to the canal wall and eardrum. So you can imagine it's slightly uncomfortable. If you've got a bit of dead skin on your hand somewhere and you're peeling it, it's that kind of sensation. So the patient's going to do that every 2 weeks. And obviously we've advised the patient not to use water. That's one thing that the patient hadn't been doing since last time, because last time the patient had been getting water in the ears. The patient was very diligent on this occasion, was avoiding that. But with the cotton bud issue, so the patient's saying, what do I do if I've got an itchy ear? So I've recommended acetic acid spray, ear calm, we call it in the well, that's the branded name in the UK. So as opposed to when you've got an itch, to scratch it, because that's obviously a catch-22 situation. Because if you've got an itch in the ear, and you scratch it with a cotton bud or your finger or hair grip or wherever it may be, or bobby pin, you're actually grazing the skin that lines the ear canal. That does two things. That skin is quite important because it protects, it's a protective barrier. It prevents infection from entering deeper into the ear canal. But also, once you've grazed that skin is going to grow back and it's going to heal. And during the healing and regrowth process, it's an itchy process. So by scratching your ear, you're almost guaranteeing you're going to get an itch in a couple of weeks further down the line. So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy by to stop an itch with a cotton bud. You're actually going to aggravate it later on. So I told the patient to use ear calm, which is an acetic acid spray, and it does what it says on the tin, really. It calms the ear down. So whenever you've got an itch, just spray this as and when necessary, and it will just mute his ear, so to speak. So you can see this, so the eardrum's visible, but we've got this skin, and okay, we could have left it, patient was hearing better, but the skin's not going to come out by itself. So I just wanted to try and get this out for the patient. Again, the patient's a bit unsteady at times, so we have to be really careful because we're right on the cusp of the ear canal, the bony part, and if we make contact with that, it's going to be really uncomfortable for the patient. So not only am I trying to avoid the canal wall, just even if the patient was dead still, I'm also accommodating for these head movements at the same time, which can be really, really tricky. So you're kind of almost looking at how the patient's head's moving his head, and you're accommodating for that movement whilst also trying to peel dead skin off the canal wall without making contact with the canal wall. So it can be really difficult, guys. But we managed in the end. So here's some skin at the bottom, and it's hidden away. So where the ear canal here, it goes downwards, and it creates a little trench which is not sometimes visible to the naked eye, and you've got all this skin. You'll be quite surprised in a minute by how much skin actually came out. Even I was a bit surprised. And that's going to help the patient because that skin wasn't going to come out by itself. So we've got it out for him. At least this way, it will hopefully be a bit longer before the next time he does have to reattend again. So this is some dead crusted skin on the anterior recess, so to the left-hand part of the ear canal. So what are these recesses? Where do they come from? Now, I've explained it quite a few times in my videos, but obviously you may be a new subscriber, you may not be aware. The ear canal, as it goes closer to the eardrum, about 0.5 centimetre away from the eardrum, we have what we call an isthmus, and that's a natural narrowing of the ear canal before the ear canal widens back outwards again. You can actually probably see that just to the left where the suction tip is. You can see the ear canal goes in and it goes back out again. And that creates a recess, and typically two recesses, one to the left-hand side of the ear canal. In the case of the left ear, we call that the anterior recess. So anterior means to the front. So in the case of the left ear, the left-hand side of the ear canal is to the front, so it goes towards the nose, whereas the right-hand side is posterior, that goes to the back. And it also creates an inferior recess where I'm just here, and that's at the base of the eardrum. Inferior means the bottom. And it's sometimes, in some people, it can be really prominent, these recesses, and it's like a hidden trench, a hidden cave, and just about visualise. But we managed to get it out. So just some left here on the anterior canal wall, mid wall, some dead skin, just peel that off. I still think there's a bit more at the base on the inferior recess. Now, it may not be visible to the naked eye, but I can just see a thin slither of skin here. Really, really thin slither, I have to be really gentle. And I just about managed to get it out. You can see there. I think I had to come out a bit. On the right-hand side, you can see this. There we are now. And I'm just lifting that up and away and then out. I have to lift it up out of this trench. There we are. So we managed to get all that out. There's the patient's eardrum. Really happy with that. It's like a piece of skin on the right, but that's moist. It's damp. It's not